Welcome to nGuard's introduction to PCI DSS 4.0, the first look. I'm Eric Consford. I'm joined with Chris Lau, Zack Thornton, and Jim Brown for an informal discussion around PCI DSS 4.0. The purpose of this presentation is to discuss 4.0, the upcoming timeline. We'll cover what stayed the same. There are now two different approaches to compliance, customized and defined. Cover the new and stronger authentication requirements, and then we'll cover the merchant and service provider added due diligence. Something I saw recently from a presentation from the PCI Council that I found funny and wanted to share with everyone is compliance is like pregnancy. You're either pregnant or you're not. You're compliant or you're not. So the timeline, PCI DSS 4.0 was released in March of 2022. The PCI Council will begin providing transitional 4.0 training to ISA and QSA in June of 2022. New QSA and ISS training for version 4.0 is under development and will be available in 2023. There's also a 2-year transition period with version 3.21 not being retired until March 31st of 2024. And the future dated new requirements do not become required until March 31st of 2025. An example of this would be the new password requirement for users being a minimum length of 12 characters and using both numeric and alphabetic characters.
Eric, I had a question on this. So, if someone's brand new to PCI, just beginning on that, embarking on their PCI journey towards compliance, or someone has come in and told them that they need to be PCI compliant and they haven't gone through any of the requirements before, do you recommend that they start and go right for 4.0 since it's the newest version out there and just begin right with that? Or do you think that they should start with 3.2.1, get their hands around PCI and start from there? What's the recommendation from you for that?
Exactly, the latter there, Zach. At this time, we would recommend starting with 3.21. And as we go through the assessment, we would note areas that are changing to 4.0 in order to provide the client plenty of time to be compliant with these new controls. An example of that would be the one we just discussed around the new password requirements noted above. So as we go through the assessment, the QSA would note that the new requirement is now 12 characters and numeric and alphabetic. And that is effective March 31st of 2025 to give you optimal time as a client to be compliant. So what stayed the same? The 12 core requirements remain the same, with the majority of the changes being around controls that were either simply rewritten, restructured, merged, or separated to provide added guidance and clarity. And of course, the requirement for annual compliance has not changed. Two different approaches. One, the same defined approach methodology that has not changed from version 3.21 is still the same for 4.0. The new change, though, is a new customized approach that is being introduced. With the customized validation, the client designs and implements controls that meet the objective of the PCI DSS requirement. The client then documents their customized control and how it meets the required objective. Next, the assessor derives testing procedures, including what is to be reviewed, evidence to be examined and observed, interviews, and etc. And then finally, the assessor performs the assessment per the assessor's derived testing procedures.
Eric, I had a couple questions around this, specifically the defined approach versus the custom approach. As you mentioned, anyone that's filling out an SAQ can't do a custom approach because there's no validation there. You need a QSA to come in and validate that that is a valid approach to take to maintain PCI compliance. But for those customers that can do custom approach and are having a ROC completed for them, can they pick and choose particular areas that they would do custom approaches? Or if they're going to do a custom approach, everything has to be a custom approach and the whole ROC is based off of that?
Good question, Zach. And customers do have the option to pick and choose which one they would like to do the customized approach for versus which one they would like to do the defined approach for the most part. I say for the most part because the majority of those controls are available to do a customized approach for. However, there are some that are not. For example, PCI DSS 3.1 prohibits the storage of sensitive authentication data after authorization. So that's a clear-cut defined approach, and there would be no customized approach to that.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that. The second question that I have is with COVID-19 that came into play and pushed a lot of people to remote work from home. Looking at the call center perspective and the amount of people that are working home since the pandemic, does PCI 4.0 address that in any way? Are they going to be more strict on auditing the call center agents that are working at home? Are they going to look for auditing that particular individual's home environment and what they're working out of? What's the approach there?
Good point. PCI does not require audits of agents at homes. PCI wants to audit and assess the sensitive data, where it lives and where it flows. So fortunately for everyone involved, there won't be a QSA showing up to your door and conducting interviews and collecting evidence from the comfort of your living room.
Okay, that's good to know. I appreciate that.
Good. Stronger authentication requirements. So PCI DSS 4.0 aligns with the NIST guidance on digital identities for authentication and in the lifecycle management. As the payment industry has gradually moved to the cloud, stronger authentication standards to payment and control access logins are necessary. Multi-factor authentication for all accounts that have access to cardholder data, no longer just administrators. Passwords for accounts used by applications and systems must change every 12 months. And then user passwords must contain 15 characters along with passwords for accounts used by applications and systems. And in addition to the 15 characters, they must include numeric and alphabetic characters as well. And then access privileges must be reviewed at least every 6 months.
Eric, so the question I had was the rollout of PCI 4.0, do you think the level of effort and time required to do the assessments is going to increase?
Unfortunately, Jim, yes. The increased requirements will equal increased amount of time the QSA needs, as well as the amount of time and effort that the client needs to prepare. PCI is reacting to the state of the world now, which is increased connectivity, and that will require more controls, and that requires more effort.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So the first step in preparing for a PCI DSS assessment is for the entity to accurately determine the scope of review. The assessed entity must confirm the accuracy of their PCI DSS scope according to PCI DSS requirement 12.52 by identifying all locations and flows of account data and identifying all systems that are connected to or compromised could impact the CDE. At least annual review of hardware and software, as well as cipher suites and protocols are now required. And additionally, a target risk analysis for any controls that use a customized approach must be completed at least every 12 months.
So, Eric, quick question. I see it really in bullet point 2 and 3 there. We talk about a formal and documented annual review of both hardware and software that's in scope, and then again, looking at an annual review of cipher suites and protocols. Is this something that a customer that's seeking PCI compliance is going to need to have documented on the front end and provide that to the QSA prior to the formal audit, having policies and procedures in place for conducting these reviews? Or is this just something that they have to go through that process and document it on an annual basis, as they go through the process of doing these things?
Great question, Chris. So there are no requirements for these to be written in a policy or procedure. However, the entity is expected to retain documentation, for example, to show how PCI DSS scope was determined. And the items that you mentioned above here must be documented, and that documentation is retained for the assessor review and referenced during the entity's next PCI DSS assessment.
Gotcha.
So this was our first PCI 4.0 advisory. There's more to come. You can sign up for future security advisories on PCI 4.0 and other cybersecurity news at nGuard.com/blog. And please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We welcome them. I want to thank everyone for their time today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.